I've developed a questionable talent for building Star Wars in Minecraft. In this video, I'm recreating one of my favourite scenes from each trilogy. The prequels, the originals, and the mistakes. But we're not just building. I'll be using mods and datapacks to stage skirmishes, operate vehicles, and really bring these scenes to life. Starting with the prequels, we're tackling the Plains Battle of Naboo, and that means laying out the dimensions for a Trade Federation landing craft at 1:1 scale. This massive 8-shaped transport vehicle was used to ferry the droid army from Lucahulk battleships to planetary surfaces. Here you can see me using coloured wool just to establish the basic shapes. The landing ship was armed with double-barreled turrets towards the centre, as well as wingtip laser cannons. I textured the craft with its Trade Federation brown paint job, so that it no longer looked like a bouncy castle, adding panelled patterns and grey highlights to break up the flat surfaces. Those massive wings stored armoured assault tanks and multi-troop transports, which stored droids. The whole system reminds me of Russian nesting dolls. Anyway, my AAT design was very intricate due to its small size, including levers and a grindstone to shape the cannons, as well as a nice hatch for the droid pilot. My MTT design, first featured in my Kashyyyk video, utilised lots of walls, trapdoors, and glass panes for its smooth slopes. But for this project, I added an open variant with the droid racks deployed. For the craft's interior, I crammed in as many vehicles as I could, including a turntable to rotate the MTTs towards a central lift platform. Once the ship had landed on a planetary surface, like the Great Plains of Naboo, its front doors could open up to deploy a ramp and start offloading. With the awesome landing craft menacingly awaiting combat, an unexpected army was gathering to meet them. The Gungans were the indigenous species of Naboo, living physically and culturally divided from human colonists for generations due to mutual distrust. However, the Trade Federation invasion forced an unlikely alliance. The Gungans used domesticated Fambers, huge quadruped amphibians with tough hides, as beasts of burden to carry deflector shield generators. For the iconic shield domes, I used hollow spheres of glass, and although I could control their radii, it was difficult to judge how the shapes would intersect with the ground, and each other, without some trial and error. I settled for a smaller scale design to reduce the negative space inside, before designing 3 unique sets of projected energy tendrils, connecting the generators to the domes. Since the shields couldn't be dynamic in-game, I replicated a shimmering effect by doubling up the thickness, giving both layers a different Voronoi noise pattern with white glass. And the benefit of the 2 layers is, of course, that you get the effect within the domes as well. The Gungans had these organic catapults with curves seemingly incompatible with Minecraft's grid, but I managed to make each part distinct using some clever shaping techniques. I also designed a defense inspired by the Expo from Clash Royale. Hopefully that's not triggering for any players. Having scattered these around, there was still some empty space, but you'll soon see how I filled that with NPC warriors. Facing the domes, I built up a small hill over which the Trade Federation vehicles could traverse, mirroring a scene from the Phantom Menace. Then I replaced the forward MTTs with their deployed versions. And with the landing craft looming in the distance, I think this sets up an epic scene. In using the Eureka Ships mod for Valkyrian Skies, I could actually fly the massive ships. Just add some balloons, a few engines, some fuel, and a helm, and the vehicle can escape Minecraft's grid. This allowed me to fly over the battlefield, up in the clouds, and roleplay a landing, all of which being a lot more fun than I anticipated. You'll see these pop-ups for the various modifications I'm using throughout the video. It means I've linked that resource in the description for you, and also gives credit to the hard work that I've not done. I'm just the builder guy cementing it all together. To create the battle droids, I reskinned the skeleton mob, since it happens to have a similar skeletal design. modifying a skin by Bob the Jedi and adding an antenna for accuracy. Then I used the Custom NPCs mod, a very old and popular mod recently ported to newer versions, to fully customize the droid's behavior, movement, sounds, and loadout. And I did the same for the Gungan warrior, giving the NPC an energy shield and using the Heart of the Sea item to mirror the Gungan's distinctive boomer ammunition. Scaling up the combatants, whoa, that guy is really excited to go. I staged the droids as if they were just storming through the shield dome, and I lined up a double rank of Gungan warriors to meet them. The ensuing battle was not on a movie scale, but more like something you'd see in an old Battlefront or LEGO game, hopefully nostalgic to some viewers. That's 1 trilogy down and 2 to go. For my next project, I wanted to recreate an environment from the forest moon of Endor, particularly the Death Star shield generator and a cute Ewok village. For the base terrain, I overlapped 2 3D noise generations from the Archeon plugin, creating a jagged series of outcrops sticking out of some natural looking slopes, which I could then smooth together and texture by angle. Cutting around the hills, I marked the path of a shallow stream, which will also double as a speeder bike track, as you'll see later. I textured the trail with podzol, soul soil, and mangrove roots, adding pockets of water and vegetation-covered marsh. An important part of Endor's Imperial outpost was this landing platform. The installation's support structure contained several catwalks, which acted as docks for all-terrain armoured transports, and it was typical to see a Lambda class on the top pad. With the surrounding terrain looking rather bare, Endor was going to need some towering tree designs, inspired by the Californian redwoods of its filming location, which calls for a treetage. That's a work in progress name. My process started with a spiked trunk, followed by a streaked pattern using 3 separate gradients to texture the bark. From the top, I added levels of branches in groups of 3 or 4, making every single branch unique. Then I textured the leaves by sunlight and detailed them with green candles resembling needles. This process was subsequently repeated until I could no longer feel my fingers. Seriously, I don't know why I did all the branches by hand. You're watching days of my life flash by. After I had designed 6 mature redwoods, I mirrored them, made those slightly taller, and redid their texturing to create a new set. I also repurposed some old trees to create younger redwoods, before building some mossy boulders and a couple fallen logs to complete the asset pack. The Rebels' objective on Endor's Forest Moon was to destroy the massive planetary shield generator protecting the second Death Star. Han Solo led a strike team that would have been unsuccessful if it wasn't for the help of an Ewok surprise counteroffensive. For the dish, I used a section of a large sphere, then added a triangular grid pattern using Archeon's Icosphere command. On top of the main dish, I built a baby dish, and copied the design around its perimeter. The smaller dishes all pointed towards a central spire, which projected the Death Star's shield. At this point, the shield generator was only made of full blocks, because my plan was to use the Axiom mod to rotate the whole thing. I think that this was the smartest way to go about making such a large angled build, since it ensured that all of the smaller dishes were symmetrical despite being off-axis. The single, rather significant downside to this approach was that the transformation resulted in artifacts everywhere. This meant that I had to spend a few hours hand-smoothing all of the dishes, but that was okay because it resulted in a splendid time-lapse. Then I broke up the grey texturing with a cellular noise pattern, before applying more smoothing to the central spire that had also been shifted to an awkward angle. The shield generator turned out amazing, and seeing its imposing silhouette was certainly an integral part of this scene. Remember my tree designs? To quickly scatter them around the terrain, I used Axiom's Stamp tool. It allows you to add multiple schematics to a group, adjust their density and individual chances of appearing, and spawns the assets in with random rotations wherever you specify. It includes an especially useful feature wherein you can finally adjust each asset's final placement, which I utilized to prevent any overlaps or floating trees. Gradually, I brought the forest to life, filling the ground with patches of trees that looked natural due to their different heights and supporting elements. With the stamp tool, what would have been a day of manual placement became a more streamlined process. It still took hours though. To vary the mossy ground texture, I introduced a purlin noise pattern including all of the dirt blocks and grass. This meant that every block on the floor was able to support a fern or grass above. Endor had a lot of ferns, so I made sure to include large ones too, making the shrubbery feel thicker. I was excited to recreate the bunker scenes from the movie, constructing the weathered installation and seamlessly fitting it into the existing terrain. I also built a small interior leading down towards the shield generator's control terminal. Deeper in the forest, I designed some Ewok huts for a secluded village, laying out an elevated platform with a lift and a campfire. Then I connected a higher platform via a rope bridge, detailing everything with lighting, storage, seating, and of course, net traps. And that completed my Forest Moon of Endor scene, but it wasn't the only secret hidden in this expansive diorama. If you would like to explore these environments for yourself, you can find all of my downloads on my Patreon site. Membership includes every project I've showcased on the channel, including almost 100 vehicles in one pack. Thank you so much to my supporters. To bring the Ewok village to life in quite a chaotic fashion, I again turned to the custom NPCs mod, creating an accurate Ewok character using the built-in custom model parts and scale sliders. Then I gave them sticks for spears, as well as the ability to leap attack like the wolf mob. For the stormtroopers, I gave them shockingly bad aim and armed them with comically large blasters from the same mod I used for my Geonosis project last year. The resulting skirmish can only be described as absolute cinema, with ferocious Ewoks mercilessly ganging up on their victims. This will be traumatic for anyone that has played Battlefront's Ewok Hunt game mode, so we won't linger. Another staple of this environment was the speeder bike, and I found a data pack by ChimeraBot that adds an elegant and functional model to the game. This allowed me to explore everything that I had built in a truly thrilling manner, zipping along the trail and between the redwoods, just like the movie. For my final move, I blew up the shield generator, which was incredibly anticlimactic without a proper explosion. So here's my attempt at editing one in. While I have some very strong opinions when it comes to the sequel trilogy, I think we can all agree that the Battle of Crait had some stunning aesthetics. Following this reference image, I used a large boulder brush to gradually form a world-height vertical cliff, essentially layering massive rocks until I had the desired shape. For my first texturing attempt, I applied a shadow texture at a diagonal bearing. The problem was, with the mountains curving around slightly, the shadows only looked good on the left side, even if I rotated the bearing as I went around. My solution was a technique called baking in the shadows, designating sections where I wanted the rock to appear shaded more loosely relative to the sun's position. After I had zoned the light and dark areas, I separated my initial gradient into light and dark, and applied each following the same technique as my original attempt. Off to the side, I made these squares containing streaked patterns, so that I could use a brush to print on the eroded red minerals at the cliff's base, as well as rain streak textures across the entire cliff. That rather complicated process resulted in a pretty accurate mountain range, giving me an excellent backdrop for the rest of the scene. I made the huge blast door about a third the height of the cliff, staggering it with 5x5 squares so that I could apply clean smoothing later. Onto the door, I outlined a tiled pattern, before terraforming the surrounding terrain so that the frame looked like it had been there the whole time. I smoothed each square with walls, block matching them to what was behind, and added stair notches to the sides of the frame to make it look like the door could rise. Now for my favourite part. I textured each individual tile of the blast door following this reference, mostly by hand. Although this took quite a few hours, being the scene's centerpiece, I thought that it deserved the attention. It was certainly much better than anything that could be achieved with just a noise pattern. And near the top of the blast door, I added smaller doors for the ski speeders. On the ground, I laid out the Resistance's defensive trenches. This base was originally established by the Rebel Alliance early in their fight against the Empire. The planet was remote and resource poor, and the rebels abandoned it while they were still small and mobile. So it seems implausible that they were able to build a 100-meter tall, near impenetrable door. Even if there was a pre-existing mining operation, a giant door seems wildly unnecessary. Can you tell I enjoy bashing the sequels? In the end, it serves its purpose by looking spectacular. I guess the real reason this door exists is so that it could be blown up. So the next addition to my crate scene was the First Order's massive siege cannon. After measuring out its basic shapes, I detailed the barrel opening, utilizing a sideways glass fog effect within. The super laser used miniaturized Death Star technology and was powered by Kyber crystals, the same force-attuned crystals that power lightsabers. The vehicle could deploy retractable stabilizers and was armed with defensive turrets for protection whilst charging up. After decorating the cannon's rear, I added some asymmetrical details, such as an antenna and a control station. I'm not sure if this was where a driver was located, but it had the same vibe as the cockpit on a giant crane, which felt right. The cannon was pulled along by these hauling vehicles, which had a spooky amount of legs, and I detailed their top platforms to match its design language. Since I could choose set coordinates for the connection points between the vehicles, I picked differences like 96 blocks on the longest axis, a number with many factors, so that I could implement a cable design with repeating units. Before we can fire that cannon, we need the assault's leader, Kylo Ren's Epsilon-class command shuttle. The ship had large wings to house its cutting-edge sensor arrays, but really it's to make it look like a huge bat, which is pretty wicked to be fair. I also gave it an interior. To complement the siege cannon, I designed the AT-AT's First Order big brother, the AT-M6, which got its name from the Mega Caliber 6 turbo laser cannon mounted on its back. Who would win? 100 rebels or one guerrilla walker? This video took so long to make that this meme died 2 months ago. I'm so sorry. Behind each advancing vehicle, I textured footprints to provide some context to their movement. Why the First Order didn't just drop off their troops closer, we shall never know. In a very desperate attempt at defense, the Resistance deployed these ancient ski speeders. I made a few variations and then assembled them in formation, integrating clouds of red candles and glass to emulate kicked up dust. In the sky, I added First Order TIE fighters and chucked in the Millennium Falcon for good measure. And that was crate complete. Almost. There's one more important reveal remaining. Here's the thing. I don't have the modding skill to recreate the cannon's epic laser, but I did find a mod that adds a cruise missile to the game. So, logically, I set one off from within the barrel. The explosion reveals the Resistance base, including their lifeboat ships and some yellow ceiling supports from the old mining operations here. Now I bet some of you were worried that I'd skipped the interior, but I'm not one to miss a crucial detail. I mean, that's why you're subscribed, right? Then I spent 9 days learning Blender to make a cool thumbnail. Thanks for watching.